Welcome to the Pot.Live podcast. I'm your host, Lenny G. This podcast is all about connecting the community with the thought leaders of business and entertainment in the cannabis industry. As this industry expands and becomes more and more mainstream, we want to educate and entertain our listeners and become your choice and voice for all things cannabis. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. If you are into the recreational side of the cannabis industry, yes, stoners, I'm talking to you, then thepot.com is the online and mobile destination for you. That's right, THEPOT.com, thepot.com. Where else can you find the exclusive pot made of the month? Take a pot quiz and win prizes. Scroll through hilarious memes and jokes and check out the latest podcasts, news, and trends, all while having your own profile and voice in the pot.com forum. Visit thepot.com today and get lit. Welcome to another episode of the Pot.Live podcast. I'm your host, Lenny G, and today we have two of the execs from Endourage, which is a Colorado-based company. We have Dr. Michael Steward. He is the Chief Medical Officer. He's been a licensed physician for over 20 years. He's a member of the Cannabis Clinician Society and is board certified in family medical practice, a specialist in HIV treatment and cannabinoid medicine. He has owned and operated the largest HIV care practice in a 5-state region. He has held the medical director position in the areas of hospice and home health care. He is also the owner of the California Cannabis Company and is on multiple pharmaceutical advisory boards. And we also have the Chief Executive Officer, Isaac Foster. Isaac has been the managing partner, chief operating officer, or chief financial officer of 9 startups in the industries of defense technology, telecommunications, financial services, consumer services, and cannabis and hemp. The years of experience and expertise as an investment banker and as an institutional broker. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Lenny.
Excellent, excellent. Great to have you both on board. So why don't we, you guys give a little background of how you got into the CBD, the hemp space, the cannabis space. I guess let's start with you, Dr. Steward. Tell us a little bit about your journey to this point.
Well, I would say my journey into cannabis medicine was one that was a little bit of a reluctant one because, like many people in this country, I was raised to believe that marijuana was a dangerous drug with no medicinal benefit. And what I began to notice when I was doing HIV care, I started doing HIV care before the protease inhibitors were available. So we really didn't have a whole lot of pharmaceutical medications that were available at that time. And I noticed that my clients who were using marijuana and asking for recommendations for it were actually doing better than most of my other clients were. And while at that time I was reluctant to become involved in the cannabis medicinal area for a variety of reasons, mostly that I didn't think that it had much medicinal benefit and that people were just using that as an excuse to get high. I kept an open mind about it, or relatively open, and kept getting drawn back into cannabis. When I sold my office in Denver and I moved to California, I then went into hospice and palliative care. And again, cannabis medicine came up. About 6 years ago, I began to study it in earnest and really had that be my focus for my continuing medical education. And I began to really embrace this plant and its amazing medicinal qualities. So I began learning about the endocannabinoid system, which is in our bodies and was discovered when I was in medical school or just before, but was never taught to me. So it was an exciting area that opened up a whole new area of medicine for me and really supported a complementary approach to medicine that I've been drawn to all of my career. So I am happy now. I'm not actually in clinical practice anymore, so I'm no longer a board-certified family practice doc, but I was board-certified for many years. And I continue to work in patient advocacy, although I don't do any direct clinical care anymore. I'm focusing on my duties as Chief Medical Officer at Endourage.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Isaac, your turn.
Thank you. So I guess I come at this a little differently. I remember I was on an investment banking desk back in the late 90s when sort of the internet exploded. And I remember watching that I didn't quite understand it because, none of the companies were focused on revenue or making money or anything like that. But, obviously as that unfolded over the years, that was an opportunity that I clearly missed. So when cannabis started to open up in the United States, I said to myself, I've been in 8 companies before that, and it was clear to me that I didn't want to miss the opportunity. So I sort of jumped in, didn't know what I was doing, but I spent, I guess, 3 or 4 years just working in companies that were on the front lines because I knew I wanted to learn from being in the business, not being a service provider. And so the first business that I built, or I was a co-founder in, is currently Oregon's largest wholesaler of recreational marijuana. I worked with hundreds of farms, dozens of makers of products, and in that process really learned a lot about the plant and making products from it. And I always had the question, when we look back at the cannabis industry 20, 30 years from now, what will have been the best idea, the best business? And I really came to the opinion that clinical use was going to be the largest industry. For example, if you ask somebody today, would you rather own alcohol or the pharmaceutical industry? Clearly, the pharmaceutical industry is much larger than the alcohol industry. And when you look at the plant, while I'm a big fan of recreational use, I think it's fantastic for people, but I believe the real ultimate use of the plant will be in clinical use because of how many people it can help. The plant is something that fulfills the promise of medicine, or at least as I was taught it when I was a banker, and that is reducing costs for treating patients and increasing their outcome. And this plant does that in spades. And so I clearly believe that the clinical use of hemp-derived formulations is going to be the largest opportunity. And so that's why I got into it.
Great. So you give me a good follow-up for Michael. So Michael, from the medical point of view, can you tell our listeners what you've learned? You said you came into it with an open mind and you didn't really believe it had those medicinal effects. Can you tell us from the hemp CBD point of view and maybe from research on the cannabis point of view, in your opinion, how it can help people with certain afflictions or physical ailments?
Sure. And I'd like to back up just a little bit on definitions because we are talking about cannabis medicine. Hemp is cannabis medicine, marijuana is cannabis medicine is cannabis medicine. The difference between hemp and marijuana is a legal definition about the amount of THC in the plant. And while hemp traditionally was raised more for its fibrous content, for ropes and clothes and things like that, and marijuana was raised more for its cannabinoid content. The differences really are in the amount of THC, and at least in the state of Colorado, as well as other places too. But the focus on hemp has been the medicinal end of hemp recently rather than the fibrous content. So the cannabinoid and terpene profiles is what we really want to focus on in the cannabis plant for its medicinal value. And cannabis is, about 400 different components in it. So it consists of the cannabinoids, the two most common, of course, THC and CBD, as well as the terpene profiles. Those are the parts of the plant that give the plant the aroma. They're incredibly medicinal. They're found in other plants as well, although the cannabis terpenes seem to be a little more medicinal when you talk to people, at least anecdotally. In addition, there are flavonoids in this plant. Mother Nature put together, in my mind, a very perfect combination of components in a plant, and they work synergistically. Now, that's called the entourage effect that I think Ethan Russo coined. And the opponents, or the people that are proponents of isolate medication, which would either be a synthesized or a purified isolate of a cannabinoid, like a CBD isolate would be. We use full plant medicine because we believe it works better. The people who want the isolates say that we're creating chemical chaos in the body. And I just don't buy into that theory. I don't think Mother Nature made a mistake when she put the cannabis plant together. And every different strain or chemovar of the cannabis plant truly is a different medicine. While one plant may inhibit prostate cancer, it might do nothing for breast cancer and vice versa. So we really are just beginning to touch on the medicinal qualities of the cannabis plant. The reason why the cannabis plant treats so many different diseases or symptoms that we have is that it helps balance our naturally occurring endocannabinoid system. And that system is responsible for keeping our body in a state called homeostasis, or in our natural state of health. When stresses, which are the most common reason why our endocannabinoid system gets out of balance, when stresses get our endocannabinoid system out of balance, then we have a dis-ease state, and we get symptoms as well as other diseases. So when we can bring that system back into balance, and there are beautiful ways to do it through meditation, voluntary exercise, yoga, healthy eating, and also the phyto or plant-based cannabinoids can do that as well. When we bring that system back into balance, it helps our body return to its natural state of being, and that's one of wellness. So really, the endocannabinoid system is the reason why the cannabis plant is so effective in so many different things. We co-evolved with this plant over millions of years. And in many ways, I look at the cannabis plant as acting somewhat like vitamin C in a way, as a nutrient. If you are deficient in vitamin C, you develop a disease called scurvy, and you have those symptoms. A small amount of vitamin C will help take care of the scurvy. Similarly, if we have not enough of our endocannabinoid tone in our body, whether we're deficient in it because of stress or diet, or we just weren't born with enough receptors, or we're not making enough endocannabinoids, when we are able to balance that system, of course, then we don't get into the disease state of an endocannabinoid deficiency. That endocannabinoid deficiency could look a lot like fibromyalgia, migraine headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, a variety of different things. So giving people a small amount of a phytocannabinoid in that case, like vitamin C, will resolve the symptoms of, say, fibromyalgia because it was due to an endocannabinoid deficiency. We're giving them a cannabinoid, it resolves that issue, like vitamin C is a nutrient. Now, people who have inflammation might choose to use vitamin C as an anti-inflammatory. They don't do it very often because orally it creates some explosive GI issues, and most people don't want to have to take their anti-inflammatory intravenously. But in higher doses, vitamin C is a good naturally occurring anti-inflammatory, and so is cannabis. So when you're using cannabis to balance your endocannabinoid system, microdosing cannabis may be very, very effective. If you have a disease process that you actually need to treat, you may have to go up in the doses quite a bit higher than you would to balance your system, like seizures, cancers, inflammation, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so obviously you're well-versed you've done your research and educated yourself on the cannabis plant. There are so many doctors out there that this is all new to. So yeah. in the 33 medically legal states at the time of this recording, there are a lot of doctors issuing medical cards, but really don't have the background or the ability or the data or the research to properly recommend what strain to use, whether it's cannabis or what type of CBD product to use.
Right.
What do you tell those doctors out there? What's the best way for them to get educated so that we can do the right thing by patients across the country that may not be in your jurisdiction?
Well, there are some really amazing folks out there that have put together, and are immediately available online cannabis courses. Through the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, doctors, of course, can take a CME approved, so they would get continuing medical education for their science-based study of cannabis. I'm guessing that course is about 10 or 15 hours of cannabis training. Then if they're not set that they have to have continuing medical education, healer.com, which is Dr. Dustin Sulak's website, he's a cannabis doc out of Maine. He puts together a training program where he does monthly video conferences, and in addition, you have an online course. When you complete that online course, which is quite extensive and not very expensive, you will get a certification so that people know you are a healer.com certified provider. And you don't have to be a physician or even a provider to take part in that course. If somebody is just excited about learning about cannabinoid medicine, I would really recommend they go to healer.com. I believe it's still a free website. You do have to register for it. But this particular group has really gone out of their way to provide extensive both patient and physician education materials at no cost. And so anybody who wants this type of education, it is available. It is available today, and it is available at no cost to them. I don't know how we make it much easier.
That's a great recommendation. And I love having a medical officer and a business officer on the call at the same time. So Isaac, tell us a little bit about how Endourage has created and formulated their product line and what that does for the consumer.
Thank you for asking that, because it's one of the things that we're actually most excited about. If you recall, I talked about really cutting my teeth on the marijuana side. And I think if you look at the marijuana industry and the products that come out of it, it's about 5 years ahead of where the hemp industry is today for most people. And so what we do with our products is we basically use best practices. So we use whole flower, right? Organically cultivated, that would pass all of the testing requirements in the most stringent states for flower consumption. We then make an extract out of that. And again, same thing. We subject our extracts to the same highest level of testing requirements that are in any of the legal states. And then we make products out of that, so that our products are all exclusively made from flower, formulated and kept intact. Along with that, on all of our products, we provide access to what we consider the most important 6 tests, right? So potency, what are the cannabinoids in there? Terpenes, so that people know the types of terpenes and the quantities of them, and then the 4 compliance tests: pesticides, heavy metals, residual solvents, and microbials. We think that those 6 tests should be the minimum requirement for any product used by any person to deal with a clinical issue. And so we've put that together in our product offering. And you can get direct access on each product, either on our website before you buy it, or when you hold it in your hand, to the batch test results for that particular product. And then the most important thing in any product is really what's the terpene content, right? And for most people, that's not required that you have to test that. But if you look at, and Michael touched on this, cannabis terpenes, we don't know why yet. Everybody says, explain it to us. We don't know why yet, but they seem to be medicinally far more significant than their counterparts that are derived from other botanical sources. And so we make sure that all of our products are rich in cannabis terpenes, not fruit terpenes, not flower terpenes, but cannabis terpenes, because that's where the real effort and impact is.
And where can listeners find out more about your company or obtain the products that you offer?
Our website is Endourage, which is an easy way to remember. It is spelled End Our Age, so ENDOURAGE.com. All of our products are there, and you can find out about them and order them directly. And because they're manufactured in the state of Colorado in compliance with Colorado's hemp laws, we may legally ship them to all of the states in the country, because we're protected under the 2018 Farm Bill interstate commerce clauses.
Excellent. Thank you.
There was one thing I really wanted to emphasize that Isaac touched on with the testing, and that is, we test our products, not just the plant when it comes in, but the product after it's been manufactured. And the reason why it's so important to make sure that if people are choosing cannabis products, they have products that not only test but pass. We've had an experience with a CO2 extracted product that never should have had any alcohol come into it, but it tested positive for isopropyl alcohol. This was a mistake. We had somebody who cleaned a machine that didn't know what they were doing. And not everybody tests their products before it goes to market. And even though we should never have had to have isopropyl alcohol show up on a test, it is something we test for. And it just shows how even very, very well-intentioned people can make mistakes in a production process. And testing the product before it goes to market is the way to ensure people get safe product. Please make sure you're taking tested product.
Yeah, and you actually jumped the gun on my next question for you, because one of my previous guests on the podcast is from a independent testing lab in California, and they told me that over 90% of the products that are sent to them do not test for what they claim to be. And
Yeah,
then,
I agree. I agree with their evaluation of what's going on out there, and it's unfortunate, but we are in a new or re-emerging industry, and we just don't have the regulations yet that we will.
yeah. And then I wanted to ask a few general questions. I'll start with you, Isaac, from the business point of view. You see a lot of these public companies that, they went public a little too early and their stock price has been basically crushed, even if their sales or revenue are up. The cannabis stocks have just gotten smashed. So with your background in the financial industry, I also have a similar background in the financial industry in my previous version of my life. Tell everybody what you think about how can these companies, whether public or private, how can they erase that stigma and actually get shareholders or investors to believe that they actually have something of value going forward, even though the general feel is a negative one at this point?
Oh, this is.
Are you a private company or a public company?
We're a private company, and I definitely don't want to disparage any public company or anybody else's business model or business plan, but to sort of take a macro view, right? And I've worked in 3 different states, so Colorado, Washington, and Oregon. And they all had this similar sort of bell-shaped curve, right? In the beginning, you have demand far exceeding supply, and we all know from Economics 101 what that means. And so every and any business model that you can throw in that environment works. And it works until the point where you reach equilibrium. What has also happened in all of those markets is people overinvest on the supply side because that seems like the obvious investment at the time. And then at some point, supply so severely outpaces demand that it's an issue, right? And I think in a lot of cases we've seen that same model play out on a larger scale, right? Obviously, Canada was a big deal, and at some point you had to ask the question, well, if they light every square foot that's under construction, they have more capacity. They have 10x the capacity of the whole country. Right? That's how do you back away from that? How do you get out of that situation? And so I think from an investor standpoint, you really have to look at what the fundamental business plan is of the company, and you have to overlay that with a demand chart, because if you're going to make and sell 10 million pounds at $10,000 a pound, and the whole market demand is for 1,000 pounds, that business model just isn't going to work, and there's really no way to massage that. So, as a capital markets guy, my thought is you have to look at smart, sustainable business models. And in reality, I don't even think the public markets have started yet for cannabis. The U.S. is 90% of the world market. Institutional capital has not been allowed to come in. We obviously don't have federal legalization yet. And even on the hemp side, even though we all thought there was explicit clarity on the bankability of our industry, unfortunately, it's still a question mark. And so you haven't had institutional capital come in, which hasn't necessarily brought the discipline to investing and investing thesis. So my thoughts to investors is this market is still very, very young. It still has a very long, robust future ahead of it. If you're looking at companies, try to understand what their fundamental thesis is and then map that out over reality, right? I mean, Canada is smaller than California, right? And so I really think the best opportunities are going to be in the U.S., and they're going to be companies that have sustainable business models that survive the oversupply. And those companies that are tried and tested are definitely worth taking a hard look at.
Yeah, I think you said that perfectly, Isaac. Well done. I agree with everything you said. There, especially the big 3 in Canada, they jumped public early and they just did a land grab, and they probably did a land grab in the United States too. And since it's not legal yet, that's just dead money. That's just crushing their debt numbers on their balance sheet and doesn't have the corresponding revenue. So it falls in line with what you just said with the supply and demand model. So I agree with that. All right, gentlemen, to finish up, I'd like each of you, I guess I'll start with you, Michael. Give me something in the overall industry that you're excited about, whether it's cannabis, hemp, however you want to direct it, and something that concerns you.
Oh, I'm incredibly excited about cannabinoid medicines and their potentials, especially with their potentials as anti-inflammatories. This is a truly amazing plant that can just really impact our health in such a positive way. We are just dipping our toe into the benefits that we can have through cannabinoid medicine. It's not going to be for everybody. Right now, cannabinoid medicine is much more individualized than regular pharmaceutical medications are. Finding your individualized dose can be a little bit tricky, and it does require the client or the patient to have some involvement there, and it also requires a little bit more time and effort on the physician who's guiding them or whatever provider it is. So I'm really excited about the anti-inflammatories properties of cannabis. If I had to pick just one area, I would say that's it. The one area I'm really, really excited about. I am a little concerned as we're moving forward here. We are changing systems. I mean, the system that we have had in the country is a lot of systems are just not sustainable. And as we're moving forward, there's going to be a little bit of chaos as our new system, which I think is going to be one that is much more through emerging from the people rather than coming down from authority. That system is emerging, and it's going to be a little bit chaotic. But if we can keep focused that chaos actually is not such a bad thing, especially when we're moving from one system that's not sustainable to one that's more sustainable. And my one concern is how we're going to deal with the chaos.
Thank you, sir. Isaac, same two questions for you. What's exciting and what's concerning for you?
So to me, cannabis broadly and all of its applications, I believe, is the single biggest opportunity in our lifetimes. When you look at all the places where cannabis is going to be part of our lives, right? So it's going to be animal feed, it's going to be building materials, it's going to be advanced materials. It's going to replace with a sustainable, renewable resource so many of the things that are causing us problems today. So cannabis broadly, I think, is the biggest thing ever to happen in our lifetimes, and that excites me. What concerns me or what I worry about is, as Michael said, and for us specifically as it relates to medicines, right, as it's defined in the FDA, our existing system is absolutely not designed to take advantage of the plant. The things that we always hear is, oh, we don't know that it's safe. And we hear that despite the fact that there has never, to this day, and there probably never will be, somebody who overdoses from cannabinoids. And so we've got this overlay of worry and fear and doubt when really we have a product that's been proven safe, it's been proven highly effective, and it can treat and help so many people, but we have a system in place that is designed to slow it down, to stop it, or to snuff it out. So what I worry about, or, it concerns me, right? That's the question, is how do we navigate the existing system successfully so that we can bring this plant to its full potential and heal the people that it can help and really, change the overall health and wellness of the globe.
Chief Executive Officer Isaac Foster, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Michael Steward of Endourage. Everyone check out endourage.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time and dropping so much value for our listeners today.
Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you, Lenny G. I sure appreciate your help.
Excellent. And we will see everyone next time on the Pot.Live podcast. Have you visited MJ.com? MJ.com is the online destination where you can find everything you need to know about the emerging legal marijuana industry. Where else can you find the latest original content, news, and trends? Connect to a local doctor to obtain your medical marijuana card, receive exclusive brand savings, and have your favorite product delivered straight to your front door? MJ.com has it all. Go check them out.